Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock on Wealth Protector TV. Thanks for joining us. Really excited to have my colleague and top attorney at the firm, Noelle Bryce, top attorney in estate planning. Welcome, Noelle.
Thanks, Paul. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and we're going to jump into this very important topic. It's children and estate planning. I have 4 kids, and I know you have kids, and so it's personal to us. But Noelle, what do we need to know about this?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So I do. I have two little ones, and I think when I had my first one, everything changed, and parents can identify with that really closely, in that you go from being someone who's single, really caring for yourself, and then your whole world changes. You're caring for someone else full time, and there's this idea that we're only really responsible for our kids until they're 18, but that's not really true.
Yeah,
It's a
and
lifelong.
you start losing sleep too when you have a kid.
All the sleep, exactly. Yeah, I think one of my colleagues, when they found out I was pregnant, they said, okay, get ready to not sleep for the next 20 years. So it's very, very true. But yeah, the idea that we're only responsible for them until 18, I think is yeah, it depends on the family, but I think it's a lifelong relationship. And there's this common meme going around where you see the parent holding the baby, and then as they get older, they do this like time lapse, and then later you see the child when they're an adult and kind of holding their frail parent next to them, and it's a beautiful image. And I think that that's the plan. The plan is to live very long, and the plan is to have a financial plan in place, as well as an estate plan in place. But I don't think that those conversations are happening
Mhm.
very, very often, because a lot of people don't have an estate plan, and then they forget life gets too busy. They don't make the proper plan. And the reason why I want to bring this up, and this is not so much talking about legal stuff today as much as it is a conversation with parents out there, is say, hey, let's change your perspective just a little bit and get you to look at the reality of the situation. So there's the kind of the three big things in the life insurance and the insurance industry, which is you don't live long enough, or you don't live well enough, or you live too long. And that's why in the insurance and financial planning industry, we're planning for those things. Okay, if you don't live long enough and you leave little kids around who are dependent on you, that's a travesty. That's
Yeah,
devastating. If you don't live well enough, like let's say you're a high earner, but then you suffer a disability, and now you can't afford your mortgage, or you can't
yeah,
afford the life that you imagine for your kids. Again, you're devastating the family, and what the kids are expecting as a basic, simple way of life, or at least a foundation for um, a quality of life
yeah.
that we can all agree on, that we want to provide for our kids. And then if you live too long with no financial plan in place, you become a burden to your adult children who are trying to start lives of their own, with their own spouses and kids and expenses. So the insurance, financial planning, and estate planning really all go hand in hand. And
Right.
that's why the biggest product, so to speak, or service that we provide as estate planners is the revocable living trust. And it plans for all of these situations, both if you don't live long enough, meaning you die prematurely, you might want to have life insurance in place, and a
Right.
plan inside of a revocable living trust as to how those millions of dollars will be managed for the benefit of your children over the period of time that they're children, up into adulthood and beyond, having successor trustees come in and manage those assets for them, right? If you don't live well enough, then you need to have a plan in place, successor trustee who comes in
Yeah.
to manage your assets if you're incapacitated, and take care of your kids, right? And then if you live too long, hopefully you have a nest egg and a proper financial plan. And then we could, through a revocable living trust, have a plan for wealth transfer. And at that point, your adult children may have problems of their own. Maybe
Right.
they're ill, right? Maybe they're not making enough money. Maybe you don't trust them with money. And so with a revocable living trust, at that point, when we're thinking about wealth transfer to an adult child, we can make sure that the plan best suits their life and benefits them instead of hurts them.
No, I love it. And Noel, when do you get parents thinking about the estate plan for kids? Is it when the child is born? This is the trigger event where jump in, start looking at it?
It's never too late until it is too late. So as early as possible would be ideal. Even couples who know they want to have kids who just got married, I say get a revocable living trust just for you both as a couple. That way
Right.
you're educated about your finances, you have a plan in place, you have a vessel to hold your assets if you go buy a house. And then if you have children, great. The trust can foresee that. We can put in language that should I pass away and I have children of my own, my assets go to my spouse and then my children. So we don't even need to have living children to plan for them. So couples who are pregnant, couples who just got married, couples who have one kid, couples who have many kids, having the plan is necessary. And might I say, Paul, and I think that this might scare some of my potential clients, but I think it's reckless. Honestly, it's reckless if you don't have a plan.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because we get up every day as parents, make sure they have broccoli and all their vitamins and that they have the best education. And
Mine are not eating broccoli, let me tell you that.
but that's the reality of it, Paul, right? We
Right,
we
right.
do everything for our children, but then have this huge blind spot because we think that coming home from work, we're not going to get hit by a car and die.
Right.
We don't think about those things, but they do happen, and they happen to colleagues of mine that I know personally, and it's scary to think about.
Yeah, and it's
That's why
interesting you say that because I know I've heard you talk before. One of the biggest challenges for you with people is to get them to realize that the estate plan isn't just about dying, because nobody likes to talk about dying, but like you said, with kids, it's very real for right now, and it's sort of your living, breathing document that goes into effect. Is that a fair statement?
absolutely, it's what's going on right now. We want to make sure on paper we're planning for tomorrow, not 30 years from now.
Yeah.
But the trust is so unique in that it's a rule book of how you want the plan to come into play. And that rule book can look into 30 years in the future, but you don't have to be stuck with the language you choose today because it's a revocable living trust. So assuming you continue to have the capacity, you can come back 5, 10 years later, which is a good time to come back and review, have a conversation with your estate planner and say, okay, kids are a little older now, or oh great, I trust my son completely, he's on the right track to college, going to be a doctor, etc., or a business owner. And so we can start changing and loosening up the rope a little bit, where 10 years ago they were minors, they were completely dependent, and we have no idea what the child's prospect future is, but we have proxies like maturity and age and whatnot to see into the future.
Right. Right. It's interesting. I want to bring up a couple things, get your input on it. One is, so somebody came into the firm recently and they've got two kids and one has a serious heart issue, right? And has a disability, has half a heart, probably is going to need a heart transplant at some point. And, you know, in that living trust, the parent can put special provisions in there for the child, right? Who may have a disability and may not be able to function for themselves if things don't work out right.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Paul. A lot of parents can identify with that, and it's never easy to be a parent of a special needs child. I don't have a special needs child, but I've come into contact with a lot of clients who do, and to let them know that the trust they're building today can accommodate for the continued needs of their child. They won't lose or be disqualified for their government benefits if they are receiving any. Because the whole concept, Paul, is you don't want to take a special needs child who has additional needs, they're reliant on government benefits, and then plop into their lap $1 million inheritance.
Yeah.
They have to spend it down, they'll be disqualified from benefits. And on top of that, they may not have the capacity to manage their own funds. So you
Right.
really do need a trustee there to be a referee over how much is spent on what, and grow the wealth so that the child, if they're not capable of earning a lot for the rest of their lifetime, so those are just where the numbers are being calculated, then at least we can make a proper financial plan with the trustee managing the money for the benefit of the child during their lifetime. And so they can always fall back on those funds to improve their life and maintain a quality of life that is in line with what their parents imagine for them, without the need of, giving the money to the grandma or
Yeah.
the auntie has a handshake agreement that they'll take care of the child. It's like, you don't know whether they'll be able to do that. They may be great people and keep ironclad promises, but the reality is the promise ends at that handshake. They themselves may lose capacity, they may pass away. And so the money you give to someone else to take care of your child, putting them as a beneficiary on your life insurance policy instead of the trust for your child, which is a
Yeah.
completely different scenario.
Yeah. That's great input. The other thing I was thinking about too is I've heard you and others at the firm talk about the the way parents can handle a discussion with their kids about estate plan. For example, when the kids are old enough, whatever age that is, maybe it's teenage, college, or later, and as hard as this is to do, it's the best practice is sit your kids down, tell them we have a living trust. Here's what's going on. Sally is going to be the trustee, not you, Jimmy, for these reasons. And it creates family harmony. I just think that sounds like such an awesome thing to get done if you can pull it off. What is your comment about handling it that way?
You have me tearing up a little bit, Paul, because I have clients who have done this with their kids, and kids are varying in ages. And it's so beautiful to see the parents say, well, I talked to my 10-year-old and they said, Daddy, I can't, but I don't want you to die, I don't want you to leave. And it's like, well, but that's not the conversation we're having. We're just saying, just in case, grandma's going to take care of you, or Uncle Bob is going to be there for you. And so you can have that conversation with a 10-year-old or even a 5-year-old if you're able to just meet them where they are, so they know they're loved and they know that you have a plan in place just in case you're not there. How
Yeah.
beautiful is it to have that conversation? I think what you're talking about is that you have an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, and they're or maybe it's a teenager who's very mature, and you can sit down at the dinner table and have that conversation and be very detailed about who's in charge and who's on what, who's on
Yeah.
second, and what everyone's role is. And I always tell my clients it's very important to have on paper who is acting in what role so that everyone can agree, we can reduce conflict. And
Mm.
so that conversation that conversation builds up those expectations and makes sure there's no hard feelings. And what I really like about that idea, Paul, and I do recommend this to my clients, is have the conversation when things are going well. You're
Yeah.
happy, you're healthy. They'll have a good memory to come back to when things aren't so bright anymore, and maybe when that candle is no longer lit, in terms of the presence of that parent in their life. And so they can come back to that conversation in their memory and say, well, I really appreciate that my parents brought this up and that they thought about this, that they had a plan in place. And when they're older, they'll even see the gravity of how important it was to do that and how responsible it was to do that.
Yeah, because I just was thinking about this because an acquaintance of mine owns some rental properties, has two kids who are older. They're in, their 40s. But he's getting older and he just transitioned this to his kids, and he had this discussion, got this estate plan. He now has the kids managing the property. And so he's just done a very thoughtful transition to the kids. They're taking over. I just thought he did such a great job with that, and the kids are on board. They're not fighting. Everyone's on the same page, family harmony, property's getting transferred. Just, he just did it the right way.
Yeah, we see success stories like that all the time, because when we start planning and when things go well and we don't have a sudden accident or premature death, then we have began a vehicle of planning where the entire family, assuming they all get along, hopefully, but they're all in the know, super transparent. Everyone knows what's going on. What that does is it allows for business succession, like you said, to be very smooth. So if there is a child who's kind of coming into the family business, estate planning is a great place to start handing over some of those, either ownership or control of the business, which is
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah,
And while keeping things fair among other siblings who may be around. So there's the business succession side of it. And there's also just the protection from later in age if they're potentially going to be changing the trust outside of their own volition, right? If there's undue influence or elder abuse, financial elder abuse, or maybe there's like some new spouse, quote, air quote, spouse in the picture later in life. It's like,
right.
gosh, I can't believe that's happening. But when you have the family from the beginning in a transparent conversation, everyone kind of knows what's going on. It protects from future abuse and misuse of the documents. Now, Paul, I'm not recommending this for everyone, because I think sometimes a level of not secrecy, but a level of privacy with the parents is important,
Hmm.
based on the family dynamic.
Yeah,
But I could say, you don't have to give them a copy of the trust just because you're talking about the concept of
yeah.
being on the same page. So there's that creative wisdom of how to share but not overshare with your children. And I think that's specific to the family dynamic.
Yeah, and one other thing this guy did too is, kids are married, they have spouses, they're in business and doing things. So he, in his trust, created another trust that kicks in upon his death, where assets get transferred into this trust for the kids. So it's sort of an asset protection trust to protect against if they got divorced or something, especially for the property that's been in the family for a while and it's kicking off income. So I thought that was a pretty smart move too.
I love it. I love it, Paul. Anytime we do that long-term planning and we have the trust language that includes the asset protection language, is like a beautiful vessel and income generating vehicle that you're handing down to your adult children, that's protected from creditors, protected from potential issues with either disability or divorce, what have you. And we can do all of that planning when we are open to it. We're open to having those conversations. And Paul, I work with clients who have an infant, and I work with clients who have 5 adult children and they never put a estate plan together.
Yeah.
They're retiring and they're finally getting around to doing it. And I think the main goal is just do it. Just do it. Even if you are somewhat uncomfortable with thinking about the future, the next 10 to 30 years, just put something down that is sensible, that is attorney approved, because they're looking at the full picture of everything, and looking at your situation, so they'll give you the best recommendation. But attorney approved plan that's specific to your family's needs, that you can come back and tweak every couple years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever works for your family. That is the most caring thing you can do for your child,
Mhm.
honestly. It shows that continuous caring that you do for them every day, exemplified in a piece of paper or a binder in this case, right? A state
Oh,
planning
yeah,
binder
yeah,
with all the documents in there.
yeah. And I know, Noel, you've got a complimentary planning assessment sort of consultation you do with everybody. They come on board, then get one-on-one with you to talk about their stuff. What does that look like?
Happy to do that, Paul. It looks like whatever the client wants it to, so long as they reach out and they're willing to have that conversation. We can do a phone consult, Zoom consult, in person. Our office is in Orange. I can also travel in the Southern California region if someone is truly in need of a house call for any reason. We can venture out into that possibility. But I would say 90% of my clients are happy to just start the phone conversation, 30 minutes, get to know each other. If it works out, we continue. Usually the first meeting that I'd like to at least get to know them well enough to be able to put pen to paper is around 90 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm happy to do that, or less, 30 minutes, just an intro call. Some people are not quite ready to hit the green button, but they just want to talk and ask some questions. What's a trust? What's a will? Why do I need to do this? So I'm happy to have those conversations. But if they're going to move forward, I would need at least 90 minutes to give recommendations and get to know their family well enough, ask those hard questions, and make a plan from there.
Definitely, yeah. And so I want to say to everyone listening, wherever you're watching this, around this video, you may be watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever, is going to be the link to sign up for a one-on-one with Noelle. So maybe it's up here, down here, depending on where you are. Click on it. You can, get on the calendar. And yeah, love to give you input from Noelle. Noelle, thank you very much. This is always informative when we do
Thank
these
you.
things. I love it. So thank you, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Take care.